chief of police. But we aren't going to deal with that, but I'm just letting you know, don't worry about it. And my great friend over here, we're going to have some security passing out there, so we won't have any trouble, okay? So I just want you to know that. So look, feel comfortable, prepare yourselves to have an intimate moment, a very intimate moment with the next governor of the great state of Texas. Prepare yourself for an intimate moment with the next governor of the state of Texas, Mr. Beto O'Rourke.
All right, Port Arthur, how you doing? Good to see you. Mr. Council Member, Madam Chair, Mr. Mayor, to our precinct chairs, to everybody who has shown up here today. I am so grateful to be with you. This is, just during this campaign over the last 9 months, this is our third visit to Port Arthur. We first came at the invitation of Mayor Bartee. We were on a conference call with a dozen, maybe 24 other mayors from Texas City, some bigger than Port Arthur, some smaller than Port Arthur. And the mayor says at the end of the call, he says, I really want to know if you mean it. You said you want to partner with me. You say you want to understand what's going on in Port Arthur. Well, come out here and see us. And it doesn't matter that Port Arthur and El Paso, Texas, where I live, are further apart than any two cities in the state of Texas. What matters is that you and I, he and I, we're both Texans. And we've got to find a way to literally find the common ground between us, between that county, this one, and the 252 between us. So I came out, I met with the mayor, and was absolutely overwhelmed and impressed. He described some of the challenges that we've seen in this community over the last 30 or 40 years, the disinvestment in this community. Families that pulled up their stakes and left town and went to other communities, even if they worked right here at Port Arthur, at Motiva, or any of the other big employers right here in this community. They're paying property taxes in another city, or maybe even another county altogether. He talked about what that did to the tax base of this community and the resources that you all have, that the council has, to invest in the quality of life for the young people who are growing up here. But he didn't ask for a handout. He didn't want someone to ride to the rescue and save the day at the end of the day. He relied on you, on himself, on the community right here. And he took us to one of the places that is a shining beacon of hope. We heard our chairwoman talk about Esperanza, or hope. Well, being at Memorial High School, right here in Port Arthur, and meeting the instructors, the teachers, the counselors, the administrators, the principal, the custodial staff, the bus drivers, and the students who were just on fire inside with their deep drive and desire to do better for themselves and to do better for this community. Going to normal high school classes, I say normal, the same high school classes that say my kids are going to be going to tomorrow when we have the first day of school at El Paso High School, where I've got 2 kids starting this next academic year. You know, English class and social studies and algebra and all that stuff. Well, you have those classes here at Memorial. But you all have built a new wing of that school that is focused on vocational education. So we saw young women and young men in the medical arts training to be doctors at the age of 16 and 17 and 18. The mayor and I met a young woman, Ms. Williams, future Dr. Williams, who was treating a patient, training to treat a patient in that classroom. And I said, she was in a nursing program right now. She was in nursing scrubs. I said, do you want to be a nurse? And she said, excuse me, Beto, I'm going to be a doctor. Thank you very much. I'll be going to medical school. And the mayor made his best pitch. He said, listen, this community has invested in you, in this education that you're getting right here, and the quality of life that your parents have provided. We want to make sure that when you go off to that medical school, we can count on you coming back to this community. He said, listen, I want you to know we may not be where you want us to be as a community right now, But we are on the right track. Follow this trajectory with me. See the momentum that we have picked up. This is a place that you want to be in. You are going to help this community, Dr. Williams, be the best possible community in Texas and the United States of America. And I saw a connection there. Maybe a path she had not thought about before had opened up because she understood that this community believed in her, was investing in her, and she wanted to make sure that she believed in this community as well. I saw those in welding programs, studying to be electricians, doing the kinds of things that we need in this state, in this country, and yes, in this community. We're having a hard time finding those who have the skills or the expertise or the experience to do those jobs. These young men and women will graduate with a high school diploma at the age of 18, but they may also be graduating with 2 years of undergraduate education, an associate's degree, a welding certification, 2 years into a nursing program at no cost to themselves, no debt that their parents are taking on to get this done. You all have met adversity and the challenges that you face in this community with your resolve, your tenacity, with your belief in one another's. And what you deserve is a governor who's going to meet you halfway. He's going to partner with you. He's going to say, you know what? If we can get more kids into more programs like these, earning more money when they graduate, $60,000, $70,000 at 18, 19 years old, deepening the tax base right here in Port Arthur so everyone who pays property taxes can have that load lightened on their backs because more of us choose to move back right here. It's the same thing I think about in El Paso. When those kids that I've got in high school and in middle school graduate and decide where in the world they want to live, Amy and I want them to pick El Paso, just like you want your kids to pick Port Arthur. So I propose, and this is not something that I propose for Democrats or Republicans or independents, but I propose for all of us, that we prioritize public education before everything else in this state. Because whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent, you want your kids to be able to get ahead. You want the tax dollars that you pay into that school district to be paid, to be spent efficiently and effectively. You want to make sure that that classroom teacher, that counselor, that librarian doesn't have to work a second or a third job just to make ends meet. You want us to pay her enough to just have one job. Unlocking that lifelong love of learning from that child right in front of her. You want to listen to her when she says, hey, I'm just trying to keep these kids alive after 2 years of a pandemic. Some of them lost their granddad, lost their grandmother. Their folks may have lost their homes, lost their job. They're going through trauma that some of us can only have imagined were we that same age going through those same things. So we don't need another high stakes, high pressure test. They tell us, cancel the STAR test. Allow us to focus on those children. And that's what we're going to do. And we're going to have a partner in doing that because when we win, we're going to appoint a classroom teacher as TEA commissioner overseeing public education in the state of Texas. Now look, we do this because it will be better for those educators. We want to make sure that we extend that to the retired educators who have not had a cost of living adjustment since 2004. Make sure there's one every single year that keeps pace with inflation. We want to do it so teaching, being a counselor, working as a librarian, being in our public schools is a job that people want to go into, one that they want to stay in at a time that we're losing teachers by the thousands. But I hope we all agree that the ultimate beneficiary of that investment is those kids in that classroom. We want them to live to their full potential, to fulfill their promise, and we want them to do it right here in Port Arthur. So find me the Republican, or the Democrat for that matter, that's going to take the other side of this argument. In a state that so badly underfunds public education, right here in Port Arthur, on average, your teachers are underpaid $12,000 against the national average. Just to get to even, just to get to par, you're $12K down right now. We know that we can do better. We know that we can make this a priority. We know over the long term, we will produce a return many times over that investment in these educators. We just have to have a governor that wants to get the job done, right? That's what this election is about. You know, some will ask, and I may anticipate the questions that some of you have, that's a lot of money. If we're gonna increase the pay of every educator who's underpaid by $12,000 in this community, and we're gonna do that across the other 253 counties in Texas, where are you gonna find all that money? Well, I propose to you this. We don't lack for resources or wealth in Texas. We're a $2 trillion economy. We're a $250 billion biannual budget that is signed by the governor and approved by the state legislature. We're the 9th largest economy on the planet. It is a matter of political will. And right now, what I hear from you is that as you open your appraisal notices, as you prepare to pay your property taxes to the school district, the county government, the city government, if you have a hospital district, to the hospital district as well, some of you feel like you are getting taxed and priced right out of your home. But I'm telling you, not everyone is feeling that pain right now in the state of Texas. Our largest corporations are seeing their appraisal value not increase with yours, but decrease significantly. They can hire the attorneys, the lobbyists to contest their appraisal and bring their tax bill down. I was meeting with the president of the local school board in the mayor's office just a few months ago, who shared with me that he had just cut a $30 million check to Motiva, the largest refinery in North America, if not on planet Earth, one of the most profitable corporations humankind has ever seen. Why did he just cut a $30 million check to them? Because they could contest their appraised value down so significantly that the school board had to give tens of millions of dollars back. It's not as though the tens of millions of dollars of need in that district have gone away. That school board trustee is now forced to look to you as a property owner, as a homeowner, as a renter to fill in the balance. If we had property tax fairness in Texas, where every corporation, whether it's Motiva or Walmart, pays their fair share, we could raise $3 to $6 billion more a year and reduce your property taxes on your homes, on your farms, on your ranches, and the rent that you pay right now. We've got the resources to get this done. Let me respond to those who have approached me, either on behalf of their kids, some of whom are medically complex, need a lot of attention, need a lot of help, need a lot of love, and need a lot of medical care. Or for themselves or a family member, they'll tell me things. I heard this in Lufkin not too long ago. My brother, Beto, who has schizophrenia, but who does not qualify for insurance because we have yet to expand Medicaid in this state, goes untreated, and when his suffering and pain become too much, tries to get arrested on purpose by one of our sheriff's deputies in Lufkin to be taken to jail because our county jails in Texas now are the largest provider of mental health care services in the state of Texas now. We are 51st behind every other state and the District of Columbia in access to a mental health care provider. The rate of suicide, and I know we hate to talk about this subject, but if we don't talk about it, confront it, and face it, we will never make it better, is terrible in the state of Texas, particularly bad in East Texas, where we are so underserved when it comes to mental health care. Now, I mentioned earlier, we do not lack for resources. This is a matter of political will and winning elections. And when we win this election, we're going to expand Medicaid in the state of Texas and bring $10 billion in every single year. Your federal income taxes coming back to Texas. We're going to hire more of these providers. We're going to pay for more of our young people who graduate from Memorial to go to medical school without taking on any debt if they promise to come back to Port Arthur and practice medicine for 6 or 7 years, take care of that community that took care of them. We're going to go from 51st to first, if I have anything to do with it. And we're going to make sure that we are no longer #1 in the nation for childhood diabetes deaths The fact that this can happen in the wealthiest country on the planet to the most vulnerable among us is on each of our conscience until we do something about this. And listen, lest we think that this is a partisan ploy, that Democrats have cooked this Medicaid thing up, our neighboring states of Louisiana and Arkansas and Oklahoma and New Mexico, 3 of those 4 with Republican governors, have elected to expand Medicaid. They get that this is our program. These are our tax dollars coming back to us. And here in Texas, I know you all know this, I think it was 1965 yesterday. It was July in 1965. The first Texas president, Lyndon Baines Johnson, signs Medicaid into law in the first place. We cooked this thing up right here in Texas. We now just have to expand it so that more people can get care. If we organize, if we're willing to knock on doors, if we'll reach out and meet our fellow Texans where they are and tell them in our own words from our own heart why this election is so important to us. Dispense with the talking points from the political parties, the us versus them, the division based on our differences. Just get back to talking about your mom, your kid, your life, their family. We do that, we win this election, we expand Medicaid in the state of Texas. You all with me on that? And as long as we're talking about health care, let's also make sure that we talk about the well-being of the women of this state. We organize, we knock on doors, we talk to these voters, we turn them out. We will make sure that every woman in Texas makes her own decisions about her own body, her own future, and her own health care. It's the way it should be. And you think about it, you say, but Beto, listen, you may not know this, but we have a total abortion ban in Texas that begins at conception with no exception for rape or incest. How will we ever do this? I'll tell you what, we've been up against longer odds and overcome them before. And it wasn't anyone riding to our rescue. It wasn't any man in a position of power. In fact, it was the women of Texas. In 1972, before Roe versus Wade is decided, abortion was also illegal in the state of Texas, beginning at conception. But no one from outside came in and saved the day. No white knight riding to our rescue. Jane Roe, a Texas woman, was represented in the Supreme Court by Linda Coffey, a Texas woman who lives in Dallas today. Sarah Weddington, born in Abilene, Texas, of all places. Those 2 women pled that case before an all-male Supreme Court and won the right to privacy for these personal and sometimes painful decisions that the women of this state and of this country have been able to freely make for the last half century. It was the women of Texas then, it will be the women of Texas today who win that back in this election. That's what's on the line. Last thing that I want to say. For those who find themselves under attack right now by their own government in this democracy, they threaten your right to vote, maybe based on the color of your skin or your country of national origin, your age or your disability. They've made this the toughest state in the nation to cast a ballot or to register to vote. I'm not making this up. Look at the returns from March, the last election we held, March of this year. 13% of the mail-in ballots cast were rejected by the state of Texas. Now, to be clear, not 13% of the people stayed home or couldn't find the polling place or got confused when they showed up at the ballot box. 13% of those who proactively requested a mail-in ballot, received it, filled it out, put it in the envelope, sent it in, were rejected in the midst of a pandemic that has claimed nearly 100,000 lives. Now, if you and I watched the news tonight and they said elections were held in Venezuela today and 13% of the ballots were rejected, we'd say that checks out. That's not a real democracy. That's not us. But right now, this is us right here in the state of Texas. I want you to know that we are going to fight for you. And we're going to fight for you even though the playing field has been placed at a disadvantage to each and every single one of us. And that when we win, we're going to get back to expanding this democracy. We're going to make Election Day in Texas a state holiday. We're going to have same day and automatic voter registration. We're going to end the process of gerrymandering, where members of Congress and the state house choose their own voters. We're going to draw those lines as people. We're going to reopen the more than 700 polling places that have been closed in this state over the last 10 years. Check this out. This state is growing faster than any other, and yet we've closed more polling places than any other, double the amount of the next closest state. And make no mistake why these are being closed. The majority of them are being closed in the fastest growing black and brown neighborhoods in the state of Texas. When you see the pictures on Election Day of a line 6 hours deep outside of TSU in Houston, Texas, part of you responds with pride that anyone would be willing to sacrifice 6 hours of their lives to participate in this democracy. But it is quickly overcome with shame that we do this to any one of our fellow citizens. Because who has 6 hours? Certainly not the person making $7.25 an hour who's working not one but 2 jobs. Or that young mom who's got to get back to her kids to help them with the homework. Or that young man who wants to get back to his mom's house to take care of her because she is sick. Or that American who just says, what the hell? Why am I treated with this level of indignity in my own country? To heck with it, I'm not standing in that line. I'm not putting myself through that right now. Imagine if we reopened those polling places. Imagine if we did away with this racist law on voter ID that says, look, you can use your license to carry a firearm to prove who you are at the polling place, but you dare not use your student ID at Lamar College to prove who you are at the polling place. We have some idea about who we want to validate and verify and vote, and some idea about who is supposed to stay home in this great democracy. I want to make sure that if your vote is under attack right now, that we stand up and fight for you and ensure that you can vote. And we don't care, no me importa, if you are a Republican or a Democrat or an independent, you're an American and your vote is going to count in Texas again. If you are a member of the LGBTQ community, and you're horrified to see that the legislature is proposing a Don't Say Gay bill this next legislative session. If you can't believe, but you know that you have to because they're always going to do what they say they're going to do, that one of the justices on the Supreme Court says that after overturning Roe v. Wade, they're coming after same-sex intimacy, in other words, reviving the sodomy laws in states like Texas. They're coming after marriage equality next. They're even going to come after contraception. I want to tell you this. Not only are we going to fight for you by vetoing and stopping the bad ideas as they come down the pike, we're going to fight for you to change the laws that are already on the books that, though legal, are completely wrong. In Texas, you can be fired or an employer can refuse to hire you simply based on who you love and your sexual orientation. We win, we're changing that so there's no discrimination based on any difference between any single one of us. We're going to have a governor who speaks with pride about all of us and says, you are in the right place. You're in the right state. We are so excited that you're here. We cannot wait to see how you reveal your genius on behalf of you and your family and all of us. Wouldn't it be nice if we treated each other with the respect and dignity that we deserve as human beings right here in the state of Texas? Think about what we're talking about here. We're talking about world-class schools. We're talking about great jobs that we want our young graduates to be able to pursue, not in Dallas, not in Houston, but right here in Port Arthur. We're talking about standing up for women and ensuring they have their right to make their own decision about their own body. We're talking about communities that are under attack right now, either to vote or to love or to just be who they are. That is an agenda that brings all of us together. In our Texas, it's you and me. In their Texas, it's you or me. Aren't you sick and tired of being told by your governor who you're supposed to be afraid of? Who you're supposed to hate? Isn't it interesting? Every time this state tries to call him to account for something, he tries to distract us by those things. You may say, Mr. Governor, it's been more than a year since you could not keep the lights on and the power running in the energy capital of the world. You still haven't fixed the grid. What are you going to do about it? And he says, hold on a second. Look at those Mexicans over there on the border. You got to be concerned about that. They're coming to get us. There's an invasion going on. You may say, Mr. Governor, Child Protective Services is responsible for 32,000 kids in its custody and care. And because you have so underfunded it and not made it a priority, tonight some of those kids will be sleeping in CPS offices, in the hallways, atop the tables, underneath the desks. 100 children have died since the year 2020 in our custody and care in that program. They've been warning him for 6 years that we have a problem. Does he fix it? No. He says, you know what? There are these trans kids, and you got to be very worried about them. They're going to try to go into your bathroom. They're going to try to play your sports. They're just going to try to exist in their families. So we're going to pursue their parents for child abuse and take those kids away from them and get this, literally place them in the custody of CPS along with every other child in the household. That's what he's trying to do right now. But that's not us. You know, he's you or me. We are you and me. We are the folks in this room. And listen, Democrats, Republicans, independents, folks who don't find themselves aligned with a political party, who may not even be eligible to vote because you're too young, or you're still on paper, or you're a dreamer and you have yet to gain your citizenship because this country and this state is more interested in stunts than it is on solutions when it comes to immigration. Yeah. You are in the right place. I am glad that you're here. Make sure that the rest of Texas sees who we are right now and contrast that with those who are outside these doors. As we came in, as we tried to come in today, this outfit called the Proud Boys were standing blocking the parking lot, trying to prevent us from entering right now. And I don't know if they're still out there. The mayor referred to them earlier. Cynthia's nodding that maybe they are. And listen, given the fact that they helped to lead a violent insurrection against this country's democracy, that men and women have fought and bled and died for, regardless of party affiliation, I do want us to make sure that we take this seriously. Be safe as you go out, and let's make sure that we're taking care of each other. But this message, this agenda, this campaign, this victory based on bringing people together, finding the common ground, being good to, by, and for one another, that's us. The contrast is the folks outside, the Proud Boys, or Greg Abbott, or your current state government. That may be our present condition. It does not have to be our future or our fortune or our fate. We get to control that through this next election. You all with me on this? Let's go out there. Let's go win this. Let's win it for Texas. Let's win it for all of us. Port Arthur, thank you for coming out. We're going to take some time to take some questions. If you have a suggestion, an idea, something that you want to run past us, a question that you want to ask of me, I'm here to listen to you. My best hope of serving this community is learning from those who live in it. And as the mayor just told you earlier, you will always have a direct line to me, either directly or through him. And what I would love to do, Mayor, with your permission, is after we all win this together, I want to come back right here in this room. And maybe we'll come back to celebrate, but even better is we come back to hold ourselves accountable, right? Make sure, hey, Beto, you said X, Y, and Z. You're in office now. Where are we on this? What do we need to do to get this done? I don't know how often Greg Abbott holds these town hall meetings here in Port Arthur where you guys can ask these questions. But I'm guessing that we will have better government when it's more accountable, when it's more transparent, when you can hold those in positions of public trust accountable for the things that they committed. This one is on all of us to win and on all of us to work together to make possible to realize this agenda. Cynthia Cano's got a microphone. If you raise your hand, she'll bring it to you. She's right here in the red shirt in the back.
All right, before we start, and this is going to be our first question, I want to recognize two folks that are here. Michael Williams, who's a candidate for Congress District 14.
There we go, Michael.
Round of applause. And then we have Christian Manuel, candidate for State Rep 22.
Right on.
Okay, after our first question, I will look for hands up. Just please keep it to one question so we can get around the room to many folks as we can.
I have a very difficult question for you. It covers a broad area. I would like you to focus on the education part. It's a little known fact in the voting public that there are actually people who are trying to do away with our education system. If we do not win the majority of the legislature, how are you going to combat the Jim Dunns and the Wilkes brothers, whose sole intention is to do away with our education system?
Thank you for asking. When I first heard about Wilkes and Dunn, I thought it was a new country music group. What I've since learned is that these are fantastically rich people who are seeking to draw the wealth, the resources, your public tax dollars out of our schools, turn them into vouchers, and send them to private schools. What that means is that as underfunded as the teachers in Port Arthur are now, as underfunded as the pupils in that school are right now, per pupil funding is $4,000 less than it is nationally. So it's the teachers, it's the kids. Folks, it is everything. These people want to drain even more money out of our schools. Their intent is to destroy public education altogether. So that's the threat that we're up against, and they're not messing around. They are spending huge amounts of money to literally purchase the loyalty of people in the legislature, as the gentleman alludes to. So he's asking, what are we going to do about it? Winning is a good first step because on all of the issues that we talked about, and maybe especially this one, imagine the shockwave sent through the system, through that legislature, when for the first time in 32 years, a Democrat who is pro-choice, pro-public education, pro-Medicaid expansion, pro-worker, pro-union, wins this election statewide. There's going to be somewhat of a mandate out there that they respond to. And if you were to administer those legislators some truth serum, their number one priority is to get reelected. And if they fear that their reelection will be compromised because they're on the wrong side of this issue, I tell you what, that alone is going to bring them to the table. But I was just in Hemphill and Woodville and Palestine and Pittsburgh and Quanah and Muleshoe. I was in Pampa and Dumas. I was in these smaller, rural, remote counties, all of them to a county represented by Republicans in that state legislature. Folks, there are no private schools in most of these communities. So to add insult to injury, not only would their public tax dollars be taken out of their classrooms, and if you're underpaid $12,000 here, in some of those communities they're underpaid $16,000, $17,000. I was in Henrietta, Texas, another Republican represented area, met a Republican school teacher, right? I don't know that she'll ever vote for me, but she took the time to say, hey, Beto, if you allow our public tax dollars that I pay into the very classroom that I've dedicated the best years of my life to, if you take them out, turn them into vouchers and send them to some private school somewhere else, I will find you, I will hunt you down, I will get you. She cares so much for those kids and for justice, and she's going to make sure that her Republican representative in the legislature hears her loud and clear on that as well. Abraham Lincoln had this saying, public sentiment is everything. Yes, it's important to have the right people in the right positions in the right offices. And that's what we're working on here today. But the job is not over on the night of November 8th. If I have learned anything, it is that no victory is sufficient or final. Progress is never inevitable. How many of you were rudely awakened by the Dobbs decision or the draft thereof? You knew they wanted to do it. They'd always threatened it. For 49 years, they've been threatening it, and then it happened. And most of us labored under the illusion they'll never be able to get it done. Well, that victory that we won, Texas women won 49 years ago. They've been working for 49 years to overturn it. So after this election, when we win on the night of November 8th, just warning you, the work is going to continue. And we're going to have to work on this to bring these men and women to the table who represent these other communities. But, especially because Christian's here, I'm not willing to concede that we're going to work with a Republican majority in the legislature as he runs on a pro-public school platform, on a pro-choice platform, on a pro-local control. You make the decisions and we partner with you at the state level. He's got a fighting chance to be your next state representative. So let's win some elections. Let's push people and let's all decide that we're going to work on this together.
Hello, Governor. I'm going to go ahead and say that and speak it into existence that we say in our part of the country.
Thank you.
I'm going to make I promise it'll be a quick statement and then a question for everyone to know. If you don't think what you have already done in your Democratic primaries means anything, I want you to think of this. Texas is now on track to have the largest LGBTQ caucus, one of the largest in the country, with 3 openly gay black representatives, and on top of that, 2 Muslims Americans. So think of that. But I say that to fire you up for this person, our next governor, because we can't pass anything if we don't have a governor that says he's going to stop the horrible, hateful, cruel, and evil things that have been going on. And I'm going to say this as a Democrat who's going to the legislature, because Port Arthur, Beaumont, Cheek, China, Nome, Port Neches, and Groves, you guys are going to bring me in. But I want to talk about what he can do for us. And I would just say to you, Governor, can you tell them now that we have a good estimate that we're going to have possibly anywhere between $30 to $50 billion extra that Glenn Hager is withholding? What is it that you can do with that money, and what you're going to do with that money to make Texas greater if we get everyone in here, their neighbors, their friends, their cousins, their best friends, best friends, to vote throughout Texas, to vote for this man, to make sure that we can stand up to Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick and get him out of there and get rid of Greg Abbott and let them know what you're going to do with that extra $30 to $50 billion of your taxpayer dollars that Democrats have been working for. Can you please let them know all the things that you're going to do? Well, not all the things, because that's a lot, but some of the things you're going to do with that money to let them know that their voices didn't get voted out, because they've already elected the most diverse elected class in the history of the state of Texas. And now we're going to elect Beto.
Thank you, Christian. I mean, $30 to $50 billion is real money. We could do something with that in this state. Let me start where we are right now. I was here in the days and weeks after Hurricane Harvey. In fact, I had the privilege of being able to visit some of you in your homes or outside of your homes that were no longer livable with your sheriff, Zena Stevens, who was there not just to enforce the law. That's important. That's her primary responsibility. But she was also there literally doing welfare checks house to house. And she invited me, I was a member of Congress at the time, to ride along with her. I wanted to make sure that I could go advocate for Port Arthur and for Texas among my 434 colleagues in the House of Representatives. And I had to see and meet the people to bring their stories to Washington, D.C. Well, here we are, and you all know this better than I do. 5 years later, we have yet to see either the federal money or the state money, literally in the rainy day fund, after more rain fell from the sky on this community than any community in North American history over a 48-hour period. Homes yet to be rebuilt, families forced into bankruptcy or moving into one another. I mentioned those kids who are hopping from one couch, one home to another at the start of this school year. For many of them, they've been riding that for 5 years so far. Communities further inland have gotten the lion's share relative to Port Arthur and to Jefferson County compared to what you've gotten here. Same is true for Harris County. Does it have anything to do with the composition of this community? I don't know. Or the way that people vote right here in Port Arthur? Maybe it does. But in our Texas, again, it's not you or me, it's you and me. We're going to make sure that these resources go to help people rebuild their homes, rebuild their businesses, rebuild their lives, rebuild this very community right here. We're going to make sure that we do something about how expensive it is just to live in Texas right now. You have seen your electricity bills go up on average $45 a month every month. When Abbott shut down the U.S.-Mexico border and all the produce that we import from our neighbors, our grocery prices went through the roof. Your property taxes have gone up cumulatively $20 billion over the last 7 years since this guy's been on the job. Some property tax relief, using that money to spend down what you have to pay in order to stay in your home, to lighten the burden so that your school board trustees don't have to set a higher rate. The city council and the mayor can offer you even more relief than they have so far. I want to make sure that we're returning these resources to you, because these $30 to $50 billion didn't fall from the sky. It wasn't given to us by someone else. This is your money. These are our resources. And I want to make sure that we're funding our priorities. So to anything that we talked about today, paying educators more, increasing the cost of living adjustment for retired teachers, investing in mental health care, whatever it is, we've got the resources to get it done. Christian, you and I are going to work together to make sure we spend it right. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Governor, I'll have a gentleman here, but he wants me to ask you, what's your position going to be once you're elected on repealing the clause in the Homestead Act where the SBA cannot refinance home equity loans?
First of all, I want to make sure that I can get you an intelligent answer. So I want to talk with you after this to make sure I understand your specific situation. But for homeowners, as we just talked about, who very often are getting priced out of their homes by rising property taxes, he mentioned the SBA. For small business owners who are struggling after 2 years of pandemic, I want to make sure that every financing option is there, including refinancing your property, whether it's your home or your business, so that you can stay there, so that you can grow, so that you can hire more people. I also want to make sure that we are creating more housing in our communities where we need it. Tax credit housing from the state of Texas is a great resource, another way to use the wealth of this state. So, Mayor, I'm going to make sure that we get the contact information from the gentleman next to you, find out his specific situation, get you all a good answer, but generally that's how we want to approach this. Ms. Connell.
Hello.
Hi, thanks for coming out.
Sure. I've worked in healthcare for over 43 years, so I've seen what insurance companies have done to our local health community. Hospitals aren't being reimbursed, doctors are not being reimbursed, but nobody's premiums have gone down. Something that happened this year really concerned me. I work for a gastroenterologist and we do screening colonoscopies. It is federally and state mandated that if you have an abnormal colonoscopy, you should have one in 3 years. That means if we found a precancerous polyp, you should be rechecked in 3 years. Well, this year we had 5 school teachers, school workers that were on TRS, come to our office. We've never had to authorize a colonoscopy, just follow the federally mandated criteria, standard of care. So we did the colonoscopies on these 5 individuals. Come to find out, they were denied. So I called Blue Cross and they said, well, they're not due for a colonoscopy. I said, yes, after 3 years, they're supposed to have a colonoscopy. Well, we only cover one every 10 years. I said, no, but they're high-risk patients. They're entitled to one in 3 years. No, they're not covered. So I called TRS. I called the president of TSTA at the state level to find out about it. Well, according to him, TRS is self-funded, and as a self-funded insurance company, they can choose what they cover. So my question to you is, how can you guarantee, whether they're state-funded or group policy or any other private policy, how can you guarantee that they get the same 10 benefits that are in the ACA?
What a great question. And as you're saying this, I'm thinking about educators that I've met across this state who say, you know what, Beto, you keep mentioning how underpaid we are. Thank you for recognizing that. How our retired teachers who gave the best years of their lives now have to work into their retirement because they haven't seen a cost of living adjustment in 18 years. But I can't afford to see a doctor. I have insurance, but the copay, the deductible, the premium, it's just too much. Not too many years ago, a school teacher in North Texas had the flu, but did not have the $119 in her bank account, which was her copay for her flu medication, and died of the flu right here in the state of Texas. The number of people who die of the flu, of curable cancers, of diabetes, more than 100 years after we invented insulin, and is one of the cheapest things to produce. The fact that teachers, among other Texans, can't afford to do this is an indictment on all of us. And I love the way that you framed the question. You talked about these big companies and corporations and associations that are awash in record profits. We mentioned Motiva earlier, getting cut a $30 million check by you all. Same thing happens up in Tarrant County with Walmart. The residents there, their appraised values go up 50%. Walmart's goes down 6%. Same thing happens with the gun manufacturers here in this state. They are free to market AR-15s to 18-year-olds, encouraging them to buy, don't buy one, buy two, hundreds of rounds of ammunition, and they have complete impunity from the consequences of what they have helped cause. Just up the road, we were in Beaumont last night talking with some of those steel workers in the Steelworkers Hall who were locked out from the job, not for days, not for weeks, but for months, reliant on the largesse of this community and that community. Philanthropy, going to food banks, taking $7.25 an hour jobs. The corporations in this state, we do not begrudge them. They're providing these jobs. We welcome them to Texas. But when we win, they're going to start playing by the rules and treating us with the respect that we deserve as well. Paying their fair share, ensuring people get these screenings so they don't get cancer, so they don't die, so they can stay with their families, teach those kids, stay in those jobs. You're asking for a standard of care that we apply in the state of Texas. I don't think that's too much to ask. So look forward to working with you to make that possible when we win. Thank you for being here. Yes, appreciate that. Thank you.
I don't know about any of y'all, but I'm tired of hearing of children dying, being shot in schools, and all these mass shootings. I just want to hear from you, Beto. What do you plan on doing about the gun laws in Texas?
Thanks for being here. We are all thinking about this, and I know I speak for you. We are all with those families in Uvalde right now who are just a little more than 9 weeks removed from losing their kids. You know, everything that's important to them in their lives, just like your kids, your grandkids, that's everything that's important to you in yours. Those two teachers, we talked about the service and sacrifice of those teachers in the community here, those teachers in Uvalde, literally giving their lives for those kids in that process. And now every child, every parent, every teacher going back into the classroom, again in El Paso, that's Monday, that is tomorrow, have to wonder how in this state, after Uvalde, not a single thing has changed before the start of the next school year. It's inexplicable, and you know what, and I'm sure you feel the same way. What's hardest for me is the accounting to my kids, who are like, how is this happening right now? And the accounting that we'll see from them down the road, right? When they look back on 2022, all of these things that were happening, knowing full well that we have the power to change them, we had better come through for them, right? And it means if we have to stand up to the gun lobby and the NRA, so be it. It means if we have to take positions that are not popular with some because it will save the lives of others, well, that's fine by me. So here are some things that I know could make it better. First of all, we're going to listen to kids, to parents, to teachers, to the folks who work in these schools. If there's a better way to secure your campus. Let's make sure that we partner with you. If you need resources to get that done, we are here for you. Christian just reminded us of the billions unspent that are in our account at the state of Texas. Tell me there's a better person to spend that money on than that kid returning to that classroom. So we'll do that. The governor, the day after Uvalde, he has the audacity to say it could have been worse, right? You all heard that? And then says this is a mental health care issue. The problem is, the month before that shooting, he took $211 million out of the state's mental health care budget in a state that is 51st in the nation. So listen, if you want to fund mental health care, I'm all about it. We're there with you. We'll get that done as well. But to your question, if we do that and fail to recognize that there's something wrong with the fact that this 18-year-old didn't break any laws at all by patiently waiting for his 18th birthday to walk into that gun shop and buy 2 weapons that were originally designed for use in combat. For those who served in Vietnam, my gratitude to you forever. You went and fought in a war this country did not understand. You never received the gratitude and praise and the earned benefits that you deserve. But you have told me that many of you were carrying something like that AR-15, which was designed for use in that conflict. It was supposed to penetrate an enemy soldier's helmet at 500 feet and kill them on the spot. We know from listening to doctors that that high impact, high velocity round just pulverizes the human body. So your organs, your soft tissue, your arteries, your blood vessels, they are absolutely destroyed. They are liquefied. You all may have heard the congressional testimony of one of those physicians in Uvalde who was there to meet the bodies of those children who were killed, could not identify them except through DNA or by their shoes in one case. So I just happen to believe that the Second Amendment, like every other amendment in the Constitution, is important, and we're going to protect it and we're going to defend it, but it is also not unlimited. In a crowded movie theater, though we have the First Amendment, we can't stand up and yell fire because people could get trampled and killed and hurt. Speech is protected, but not all speech in all conditions. The Second Amendment, we agreed in 1934 in this country that we shouldn't have fully automatic machine guns. There were folks who were shooting each other up right and left in this country, and we decided those guns are on this side of the line. That's a weapon of war. We don't want to have it in our communities. Since 1934, I ask you to find me the mass shooting or the slaughter of school kids with a fully automatic machine gun. You will not be able to find it. So in that tradition, I just happen to think that an AR-15, AK-47 belongs on the other side of that line. It's on a battlefield. It's not in our schools. It's not in our movie theaters. It's not in our churches. It's not in our Walmarts. At a minimum, let us raise the age of purchase to 21. 3 more years we could have purchased for that shooter in Uvalde to have made a different decision. Some will say, hey, Beto, criminals don't follow the law, so it doesn't matter what laws you pass. Well, in Uvalde, this kid followed the law. He didn't try to get that gun when he was 17 or 16. He waited patiently until he turned 18. Raise the age, we're gonna save more lives. Implement a red flag law so that if you have a firearm in the house, but you're threatening to kill somebody with it, we can intervene. The Uvalde shooter, he was telling people what he wanted to do, or at least sending off enough signals that his friends called him the school shooter before he went in and shot kids in that school. Now, we had no law on the books for police in Uvalde to intervene at the time. A red flag law allows us through due process to do the right thing and then return that firearm to its owner once we've resolved any legitimate concerns we have. We could also expand background checks. They're there if you go into a gun store, but they're not there if you purchase from a private seller. In Midland, Odessa, in 2019, guy tries to go in and buy an AR-15. The gun shop owner won't sell it to him because he doesn't pass the background check. Great, it works. But because we don't have a universal background check in Texas, he's able to go buy from a private seller, uses that AR-15, and kills 8 people in that community. We could have averted that crisis and that disaster as well. And then last thing, and this is something I've learned by listening to law enforcement. We used to have a program called License to Carry in Texas. If you wanted to carry a gun in public, you had to go through a background check. No ifs, ands, or buts. It was universal for you. You had to have some training in that firearm. So you had proficiency in it so that we knew that you knew how to use it. You would be vetted so that if you were a danger to yourself, to your wife or your husband or your family or your classmates or the community, we could stop before you got that gun and were out on our streets. So law enforcement begged Greg Abbott, please do not sign a bill called permitless carry that does away with license to carry. Because if you do that, any one of the 38,000 people that we've denied a license to over the last 5 years because they're too dangerous, they're going to be armed and loaded on our streets and will be none the wiser or safer for it. And Mr. Governor, there are tens of thousands more who never applied for a license to carry because they knew that they would never get past the background check. They have a violent criminal history, for example, or a pattern of abusing the people in their lives. Now, all of them are carrying as well. Ladies and gentlemen, in this state today, more cops, more sheriff's deputies, more members of law enforcement have been gunned down than in any other state. We've seen a predictable increase in gun violence in the state of Texas as well. And we made it more likely, not less, that at the start of this next school year, we're going to see more shootings in more schools. And look, I hate to talk about this just as much as you do. In fact, it makes me emotional because my kids are starting school tomorrow. We cannot accept this. We cannot face their judgment having failed to act. Let's change our laws to save their lives and defend the Second Amendment at the same time. We're Texans. We can do this.
Okay, I have time for 2 more.
Thank you, Ms. Connell.
Hello, I'm Julio Cesar Delgado II. Born and raised here in Port Arthur, Texas. Educated at Lamar University and Port Arthur ISD all the way through. So I have firsthand seen the importance of being involved politically. So I'm glad that finally there's someone with common sense trying to lead the state.
Thank you, Julio.
And I agree with everything you have talked about, but one thing I have noticed that everybody seems to forget is our deported veterans. So when you get elected, will you use your privilege to govern, your access to resources, and your influence over policy to guarantee a pathway to citizenship, to bring back our deported veterans, as well as to give a comprehensive immigration reform to give citizenship to the dreamers and to farm workers?
Thank you for this question, Julio. The answer is yes, but I want to tell you why and give folks some context. I don't think you need it. We may not need it in this room, but there are folks out there, and let's just assume people of good conscience who have been misled by the fear-mongering and the scapegoating and the demagoguery of those in power today and don't know the truth. Julio begins by asking about these people, men and women, who were literally willing to die for all of us, for our Constitution, for our democracy, for our way of life, who because of some infraction and their lack of citizenship are now in Mexico or any other number of countries that they have been deported to. They may have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury, military sexual trauma. They may have traumatic amputations, lost limbs in combat, in service to this country. But to a person, they can't get into the VA and actually see a provider who could make them okay or even save their lives at a time that we're losing the lives of about 20 to 22 veterans a day in this country by suicide. I wonder if the rate is much worse in those other countries they've been deported to where they don't have access to care. In World War I, there was an undocumented immigrant. Folks out there would have called him an illegal, named Marcelino Serna from Chihuahua, Mexico. Came into this country to work some of the toughest jobs that no one else was willing to work. Our country went into war in World War I. He enlisted, signed up. His drill sergeant learns that he's not a U.S. citizen. He says, Serna, every man in this unit's going over to France, but not every man in this unit's coming back. This isn't your fight. You don't have to do this. Go back home. Serna says, the hell with that. I'm going with my unit. Goes over and comes back after that war, the most highly decorated Texan to serve in that entire war. At a time that some want to build walls between our countries, in El Paso, we just dedicated a new bridge to Ciudad Juarez, and it's called the Marcelino Serna Bridge. So in his honor, let's ensure every deported veteran is brought back to this country. And then the others who want to come here, that you just mentioned, Julio, those who want to pick the food that we depend on and take for granted. Those who are working in the cotton gins and in the cotton fields right now, who ensure that we can have these shirts on our backs today. The people in the slaughterhouses and taking some of the toughest jobs in America, bar none, who come to this country for the privilege of working for them. I want to make sure that there's a Texas-based, at a minimum, guest worker program, so that if you want to come here and work, there's a safe, legal, orderly path for you to do that. And if you want to return to your home country, because you love it just as much as we love our home countries, you don't have to face a militarized border or losing your own life in the back of a trailer in order to be able to do that. If you want to join family, you live in Mexico, but your brother or sister or your folks have naturalized right here in Port Arthur. And they're working great jobs. They're starting businesses. They're creating jobs. They're making this place a better place, and you want to join them. As you know, the line to do this the legal and right way is 20 years long. Now, I don't condone this. It doesn't justify it. But I understand why some would want to jump that line and not wait 20 years to see that family member and to live with those folks who raised them and nurtured them. Again, we need a safe, legal, orderly, and quick way to do it the right way. And then lastly, those who seek asylum, because to take their kids back to El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala might mean certain death. I want to make sure they're not waiting 6 years, which is the current wait time for adjudication, to be able to find out whether they're going to stay or be sent back. Let us hire more immigration judges. Let us spare no expense to make sure that we can address this issue. If we do that, that's 95% plus of those who are trying to come into this country. People who want to work, people who want to seek asylum, people who want to join family. Once we take them off the table as a challenge, we can focus on those who may want to do us harm. And it's a very small percentage, but there are those who want to traffic fentanyl into this country. And listen, it comes from all over the world. The biggest bust I just saw was over the northern border in Canada coming into the U.S. So it doesn't just happen here in Texas or in Mexico. But to the degree it does, let's make sure that we stop it. Folks who want to traffic in human beings, let's make sure that we stop it. And listen, when we get after solutions and stop accepting the stunts of the current administration, they can no longer use these immigrants and our border to distract us, to stir up fear and hatred against those who live in our community. We get back to focusing on the big things that really matter. So Julio, thanks for being here. Look forward to working with you on this. Thank you so much.
Okay, this is going to be our last question.
All right, Ms. Cano.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, let me say thank you, Beto, for coming to Port Arthur, because you've done what a lot of others have not done. The elected officials that are currently there, and I'm speaking of the GOP, they have not come here. They've come for the storms that we've had and the damages, but they haven't done anything else to talk about their platform and what they're going to do and how they're going to help us. And that leads to the question that I have for you. And we're sitting here in Port Arthur in the belly of the beast. Some of the petrochemical industry expansions, pipeline expansions with Blue Marlin. By the way, first, before I go further, my name is John Beard. I'm the founder and CEO of the Port Arthur Community Action Network, an environmental and social justice organization. And the question specifically I have for you is, as governor, what are your plans to deal with these two agencies, the TCEQ, who never met a permit they didn't like, which is causing all of the pollution that we have here, and that pollution is leading to the highest cancer rate, as well as heart, lung, and kidney disease, twice the state national rate, right here in Port Arthur. We're suffering, we're sacrificed, and yeah, we all got to drive cars and fly in planes and all of that, we understand it. But we shouldn't have to sacrifice our health and lives. So how are you going to handle, or what will your position be with regard to TCEQ? And tomorrow, for those of you who may not know, the Public Energy is having a meeting in Orange at Lamar College, Port Arthur, with regard to the expansion of their power plant, which is going to produce even more toxins into the air. So again, my question is, what's your position on the TCEQ and the Public Utilities Commission of Texas, and how can we help them transition into a clean, green age?
Thank you so much for being here. What a great question. You know, I started by talking about Hurricane Harvey earlier when asked by Christian, where are we going to spend this money? And I talked about the injustice of the communities affected most, getting the least of the public resources that everybody here has contributed into that fund. But it's also about why some communities were hit harder than others. I mentioned traveling the community with Sheriff Stevens in 2017, and some of the residents that I met said, you know, Beto, it was raining pretty hard, and there was like an inch or two of water in my lawn, and then I don't know who makes these decisions, but somehow that water was shunted into my neighborhood, and the 2 inches went to 2 feet, and then 5 feet, and then I was on my roof hoping I could get rescued. Now, I don't know the full story on this, but I have been told that some neighborhoods were sacrificed for the benefit of others, including some of these corporations and their very valuable property that is not taxed at the true appraised value right now. You all, I don't need to tell you this, a leader in your community just did, you're on the front lines of climate change. It's not something that's coming, it's something that is here, it's something that you're living, and it is something that you are dying from right now. We've got to make sure that we spend the resources that we have in this state helping these frontline communities weather what is happening at this very moment. The rates of cancer, the rates of asthma, the rates of conditions and diseases that are directly connected to everything that the gentleman just described. It requires an agency like the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality not to be comprised simply of lapdogs who are trying to get cozy to the corporations they're supposed to oversee, but the watchdogs who will tenaciously fight for every single one of us. The Public Utility Commission, it's the same deal. We have a current governor who ordered the PUC to peg the price of electricity at its maximum cap, not for minutes last February, not for hours, but for days. Gas started trading at 200 times its going rate. There was a transfer of wealth of $11 billion over 5 days that went from you and me to the pipeline companies, to the energy traders, to some of the wealthiest people in the state of Texas, who, by the way, turned around and wrote Greg Abbott $1 million campaign contribution checks. We have a governor who's compromised and who's dealing in corruption, and the people who are paying the price are right here in this community. So in addition to making sure that we have a PUC and a TCEQ that are reflective of this community and of this community's interests, and investing in frontline communities and neighborhoods so that we reduce the risk of cancer, asthma, or any other condition based on where you live by implementing regulations that we actually enforce. The last part of the gentleman's question was, over the long term, how are we going to acknowledge that we've got to do something far larger? Now, look, I love that there are so many good jobs in this community. I mentioned Motiva earlier. We mentioned the lockout of the steel workers who are now back on the job in Beaumont. Grateful for that. Drove here in a Toyota Tundra, burns gasoline. For as long as we need to do that, I want these resources to come from this state. I want the jobs to be here as well. But I want us to do it in a far better, cleaner, more environmentally friendly way. And in addition, I want to follow the lead. I mentioned this last night. Some folks who are here who were with us in Beaumont yesterday. I want to follow the lead of some of these young folks I met at Lamar University who are working on geothermal. There's almost a 1-to-1 match in the skill set with oil and gas drilling and geothermal drilling. It is carbon neutral. It is renewable. We'll never lose it as a resource. Those are high paying, high value, high skilled jobs. We want them right here in Southeast Texas. We want to add to that wind, solar, hydrogen, these energy resources of the future. Texas is the energy capital of the planet today, but there's no guarantee we get to be the energy capital of the planet tomorrow. By betting big on renewable here in Texas, we add to the lead that we already have, and we confront this challenge in our neighborhoods, in Port Arthur, and for the planet, and it is led right here in the great state of Texas. Thanks for being here and for asking the questions and fighting for this community. We're going to follow your lead. Ms. Cano says that's it. Port Arthur, thanks for having us out. Very grateful to you. Les agradezco y nos vemos la próxima vez.
If y'all would like to stay and take a quick picture, we do have another event, so it'll just be a picture. We won't be able to have time for more questions. I'm sorry. The line is over here. If you'd like to line up on this side. Thank you.
Thank you.